So whether they were, for sure, hostile foreign agents trying to infiltrate the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for an unclear end game, or maybe just law enforcement wannabes in over their heads, caught up in a bizarre yet elaborate ruse, the fact remains, in the case of two men charged this month with impersonating federal officers for 2 years, hoodwinking and cozying up to 4 United States Secret Service agents, there are serious security concerns that must be addressed. For the record, defense attorneys are vehement, suggesting the latter of those two possibilities is the reality, the truth. They insist the lavish gifts the men provided those 4 agents were out of, quote, a desire for friendship, saying that they got carried away and never meant to compromise federal agents. But let's just go with that for a second. Our friends at the Washington Post point this out, quote, several former Secret Service officials warn that the alleged infiltration of the Elite Protection Agency reveals a major vulnerability extending well beyond this particular case. They said the revelations suggest that agents who had regular access to the White House and the Biden family and who were supposed to be trained to spot scammers or spies seeking to ingratiate themselves were either too greedy or too gullible to question a dubious cover story. Joining us now, Carol Leonnig, Washington Post national investigative reporter, MSNBC contributor, and really our resident expert on all things Secret Service, and Danelle Harvin, former chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for Washington, D.C. Carol, you squeezed in a book about the Secret Service in between your 2 best-selling books with our friend and your colleague, Phil Rucker. Tell me how this has landed inside the Secret Service.
Well, it's sort of a tale of 2 cities in some respects, because the senior leadership of the Secret Service, I hear from their allies in the law enforcement community and Congress, are privately saying, hey, nothing to see here, keep driving, not a big deal. These 4 guys who got hoodwinked or duped, they made a dumb mistake. They thought they were with 2 law enforcement buddies, and that was not too smart, not too swift. But there is, in their view, no evidence that any great secrets about Biden's movements or about national security, the war we have going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, there's nothing that was leaked that we can see. And more importantly, the Secret Service leadership is privately arguing there is no nexus that we can see to a foreign power. But on the other side, Nicole, as you rightly point out at the top of this segment, people inside the agency and who left the agency say this is a huge failure because the Secret Service individuals involved, 2 agents and 2 uniformed division officers who protect the White House, were apparently not surprised that these people were giving them $40,000 in free rent at a luxury apartment. Didn't find it curious that they were going to offer them a free special gun. Didn't find it weird that these individuals worked for a Homeland Security police force that doesn't exist. The name should have sort of struck out to them. I'll just mention that the Department of Homeland Security official who was approached by these people, Taherzadeh and Ali, and a naval investigator also approached by these 2 individuals. Both of those people thought this was bizarre and thought these individuals were phony from the get-go, and either reported them or checked up on their credentials to find out that they were not who they said they were.
Carol Leonnig, you are one of the only people who knows how much I hold what is ancient history for me, but my time traveling with President Bush and the protection that I sort of benefited from just by being inside the bubble. And so I have a deep and enduring well of respect for the Secret Service. But this stinks to high heaven. I mean, the people that are supposed to make sure that a president and his family in the White House doesn't take, never mind a gun or free rent, but a Coke and a free dinner, are the people who protect a president and his family. And the people who are supposed to be the one that someone inside the presidential circle can turn to and say, does the DHS have a police force? I thought they were just TSA and whatnot. is this sort of protective law enforcement right in that inner layer of a president. Do you buy the cover story that there's nothing to see here?
So I think this investigation is at a very early stage, and I think it's unwise for any of us, and honestly, unwise for Secret Service leadership to say there's nothing to see here, because we just don't know. Now, it is completely possible, although it doesn't seem rational, it's completely possible these are two wannabe cops who had a bizarre way of borrowing a lot of money and wanted to befriend law enforcement and be big hotshots. It's conceivable. However, as many former Secret Service agents have told me in the last week, since this arrest made all of this escapade public, what they've told me is it's weird the amount of money involved for two people that are so financially strapped, have a history of bankruptcies, lawsuits, problems with money. It's weird that they went to this effort for 2 years. They've also warned me, and I think this is something we should all take to heart, that lots of times larger operations by a foreign state deputizes sort of individuals who don't know what the big game plan is, deputizes and leads and steers and finances folks who aren't aware of the game plan. But this has all the hallmarks of a foreign intel op. We just don't know if it is at this point. And I think we should just hold our horses until the FBI really gets down to it. I would also add one more thing, Nicole. This highlights something you referenced earlier. One more key moment is the Secret Service essentially accidentally blew this case up. A Secret Service official allegedly, inadvertently, alerted one of the suspects to the fact that there was an investigation. And so the FBI had to go in, rapidly get its warrants, do an emergency raid before they really had time to gather everything they hoped to gather about this. Basically, the cover was blown by the Secret Service.
Donal, what questions do you have about this bizarre and pretty alarming fact pattern?
Well, I agree with the previous speaker. I'd also add that these individuals lived this life for 2 years. And ostensibly, they were funded and financed to do this for whatever reason. That's of concern. What we don't know is their motivation. So putting that aside and parsing that, it speaks to definitely failures on the Secret Service side. If you're in the intelligence community, if you're in the protective security community, you're trained how to spot those who are doing counterintelligence or intelligence operations on you. And that's a training that many federal agents have. And so, to be quite honest with you, if I worked for the Secret Service and my mom invited me over for a stack of pancakes on a summer morning, I may say, "Hey, Mom, what are you up to?" And I'm obviously being funny here, but the fact of the matter is there's no free gifts when you're in that type of capacity. And so individuals in that capacity are trained to keep an eye out for these type of signs, people trying to compromise you. We don't know what's in the electronics that they were given, in the apartments. There could be video surveillance of them, putting them in a compromising position. And that's how this indoctrination and this recruitment begins.
Donal, one of the details that Carol's reported on that's been in some of the reports about the arrest center around one of the agents' proximity to First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. I remember reading some Carol's reporting in the New York Times about the crisis that ensued for the U.S. Secret Service when someone got close to jumping over the fence and just entering the 18-acre perimeter. I think it was during the Obama presidency. How do we go from the reaction we saw the U.S. Secret Service had justifiably to a fence jumper being, full crisis to this is perhaps somebody infiltrated potentially by a foreign intelligence operation who had proximity to Dr. Jill Biden? What is your sense of the reaction and whether it seems appropriate from the outside?
It doesn't seem appropriate to me. They should be transparent and say that they're going to do to look at the training. Now, if it was one agent or one uniform member, I think that it could be a plausible excuse. But four in different divisions, I think speaks to their training, perhaps the oversight of these individuals, and so it needs more needs to come out. But clearly, while we don't know the motivations of those two individuals that are under arrest right now, we do know that there's a lapse in the security posture of the Secret Service, and that needs to be looked at.